Hello everyone, my name is Tyler, and I'm joined here with Yannick from Rock the Speaker Box to show you everything you need to know about processing and creating your very own WinMagic at home. To celebrate the completion of our 4 core elements in our Magic series, Rock the Speaker Box is offering 15% off their 4 Elements sound effects library for all Aftertouch audio viewers. Sound designing WinMagic, when compared to the other elements in this series, is not a difficult task. I would argue it is the most difficult task. Synthesizing wind or recording wind is actually very, very difficult to do because of the word character. There's a fine line between characterful wind that clearly reads wind and noise. I'm not saying that you can't get good results with the more noisier recordings, but it will take a lot more effort to get there. So much so that I have a set of wind recordings that I reach to for almost every project and end up gobbling up all the good wind libraries on the market. It's honestly a problem. A lot of times, wind layers can be confused for noise or magical textures. And making sure your WinMagic reads as WinMagic and not just magical textures, you're going to want to spend a lot of time on not only sample selection, but also your processing. Okay, let's look at some good sounds that we can use in order to create our very own WinMagic. Real wind and gusts. Processed and modulated noise. Mouth simulated wind. Let me know in the comments if you can do this one. Cloth movements. Compressed air. Dragging objects across the floor. Object whooshes and swishes. Explosions. Drones. And synthetic whooshes. So before we get started on some processing tips, if you haven't seen the rest of our Magic series, I would highly recommend checking those out first, because there's a lot of processing that overlaps in these series. And for example, Fire Magic and Wind Magic has a lot of similar processing tricks. So these videos are going to go hand in hand in the processing. When we're talking about processing wind, what we're really talking about is motion. And there's a lot of tricks and tips that you can do to get motion into your static recordings. So let's look at a few things that we use here. Using plugins like Doppler Pro can create fantastic waving motions that create whooshes out of your static wind sounds. There are a lot of transient processing plugins out there, but the one that I've been using a lot lately is Traveler. Simply set your speed all the way to the right, set the shift all the way to the left, and keep your stereo set to 0. And remember to set the plugin to loop if you're processing one long file. Once you have a sharp transient, play around with the duration, Doppler, damp, shape, and speed settings to adjust the flavor of your transient. Thank you, Paul from Penguin Grenade, for sharing this tip on Twitter. For fast-moving, rotating wind, using tremolos can really help add that extra sense of motion. It is easy to overdo this process, so lower depth settings is ideal for adding that sense of speed in your wind sound designs. This is going to sound like a Tonstorm promotional video, but their plugins are very good at shaping magical recordings. If you're using Spin Tracer, not only can you precisely mimic the animation's movements, but you can also take rather still wind recordings and add a lot or a little movement to them. Okay, so now that we know a little bit about what we need and a little bit about how to work with it, let's go ahead and break down some of our designs. Yannick, take it away.
Hey there, my name is Yannick from Rock the Speaker Box, and I'm really excited to talk to you about wind and air magic. Well, when it comes down to elemental magic, wind is in my opinion often the most challenging and abstract element to do. Finding inspiring sources that go beyond simple white noise or bamboo stick whoosh recordings can be difficult. So therefore, I want to show you some sources that we recorded for our library for elements, how we process them, and how you can use these techniques to design compelling wind sound effects. When designing wind sounds, I like to break them down into two fundamental components: noise and tonality. Noise forms the basic textural element of the wind, while tonality introduces a subtle pitch which can add a unique character to our sound. Many sources that you will come up with naturally contain a noisy character, especially when recording props like compressor pumps, inflatable mattresses, soda carbonators, pressurized air cans, various fabrics, or sticks and whips. These sources often produce a predominantly noisy sound, so to make them more interesting, we need to introduce tonality through processing. A well-designed wind sound isn't just a steady recording. It should have movement and depth. To achieve this, I rely on three main processing techniques. The first technique is modulated filtering, which adds movement and tonality to our sound. By modulating filters such as bandpass or vowel filters, or basically any weird filter shape that you come up with, you can create evolving textures. Tools that I like to use are Enrage, Filter Freak, Snap Heap, and Shade. But you can use pretty much any plugin that allows you to modulate filters, or really any plugin when you're working in Reaper. The second technique involves modulating volume, stereo image, and sometimes the pitch that we've created with our filters. Plugins like Spin Tracer, Traveler, or Doppler Pro from Tonstorm are great for that. The third technique is a more subtle one that I like to call stylizing. I don't always do that, however, it can create a really cool aesthetic that I very often hear in modern sound design. So for stylizing, I like to use noise removal and spectral tools like Z-Noise, M-Vocoder, M-Ratio MB, the denoiser within Spectral Dynamics, or also Isotopes D-Reverb. They all can be used to get rid of the noisy high-frequency hits that wind and air sounds sometimes have to get a more clean and sharp sound. Or however you want to describe the effect those tools have on audio. Now, if you want to create a wind or air magic spell, you can use these techniques to craft and create already cool-sounding building blocks, either by using the sounds from a library for elements, or by processing your own recordings. From there, it's all about layering, mixing, and refining them until you achieve the perfect result. As always, there's plenty of room for experimentation, so enjoy it, and most importantly, have fun with the process. Cheers, and back to you, Aftertouch.
Thank you, Yannick. And if you'd like the 4 Elements sound effects library, click the link in the description below. If you like this series, I have used Rock the Speakerbox's libraries on a majority of my videos, including the 4 Elements and Sorcery. I have personally bought and paid for all of their libraries, and I am constantly using them on a variety of projects. Okay, let's have a look at my breakdown. Okay, so I've broken down my sound into a few different layers. One is this wind buildup layer. The second one is the wind impact layer. And then the third part is my anime layer, which is going to be like all the magical texture stuff. And then of course I added in some vocalization to make it a bit more interesting. So to start off, we're actually going to go ahead and use quite a bit of Rock the Speakerbox's sounds, but we're going to go ahead and just play a few of these elements together and just see how they all work together. Okay, and then all together. The processing on the actual master group is actually fairly small. And just a little bit of EQ to go ahead and bring up the high end and reduce some of that low bassy frequencies that's building up. And I'm using Tremolator to add a little bit more motion, and I'm automating the parameters to go up in intensity as the actual spell speeds up. Okay, now for the impact layer. Now all together. Okay, moving down to the magical texture section. This is going to be quite fun because this is where you get your own character to it, whether or not you want it to be solely wind or you want to have a little bit more flair. I started off with this casting layer, which kind of helps build that I'm building power and it's kind of going up in power. Then I went ahead and started adding a bit more to that section of the sound to get that sounding significantly bigger. And now we had the building section, and this is really more to just sweeten up that sort of bigger texture. And one of the big things that I've noticed in this spell, as if we go through it, you'll see that the spell kind of increases intensity. So we cast it here, and then all of a sudden, she draws in a lot more power in its building. So I wanted to emphasize that with these sounds here. So we have a low rumble layer. Then we have a small little cast sound. Then we have intensity building quickly. And then another sound to build on that intensity as it's charging power. And now all together. And then finally, I added a few more sounds to sweeten up the explosion. And now let's play all the anime sounds together. The beauty about breaking these sounds up is you can actually go ahead and tailor your mix. So if you want less anime sounds and more wind, you can do that. So just by soloing out these elements here, you'll get just the wind elements. And if you want less of that motion sound with the Tremolator, you can actually just turn it off. But I felt like having the Tremolator there helps build the intensity as the spell comes up. And then finally, we added some vocalization to the spell. And all together. Thank you so much for watching. I promise the next one won't be 8 months late. We got really, really busy, so we're really looking forward to Lightning, which will be the next one in this series. So thank you guys. Go make some noise.